Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Simiu. Happy Monday to you all. Welcome back to the show. Hope you've all had a wonderful weekend. I mean, Saturday night was a bit stressful, wasn't it? But we got there in the end. Arsenal took all 3 points against Wolverhampton Wanderers, despite looking like at one stage we'd thrown it all away. It was an incredibly frustrating game. The performance left a lot to be desired. We broke the performance down on yesterday's main podcast. And I was quite scathing in my assessment, I think. But I thought I was well within my rights to be that way, given that Arsenal really kind of underwhelmed in terms of the display and in terms of the performance. Look, we got the victory. And so it's not something that we have to dwell on too much. You know, I think you have to take the lessons from it. I think you have to spot the kind of need for improvement, and you have to find the areas whereby, you know, we just weren't at it, and you have to talk about them and you have to discuss them. And I'm sure that's what will be happening internally in order to ensure that we don't have another game like that, because so much was wrong with Arsenal's performance against Wolverhampton Wanderers the other night. And you can pretend that it's okay, and you can say, you know, well, it was a one-off and we still won the game, and you know, you can try and sweep it under the carpet. But I think when you see a performance like that, a performance that was probably coming really when you look at the way the levels dropped a little bit over the last few weeks, I think what you need to do is to be harsh, to be brutally honest about where we're at today, to figure out how we can get back on track. Nobody's saying that Arsenal's season's over and that Arsenal are going to collapse and that Arsenal are a mess and are no longer going to achieve anything this season. Nobody's saying that. But I think the performance that we saw on Saturday night against what could turn out to be historically the worst team in Premier League history, I think left a lot to be desired. And there are a lot of questions that are going around in the aftermath of that. And that is completely fair and understandable. Now, what I will say is this, okay? I sit here and I'm critical. I analyze, and sometimes my analysis is critical analysis, right? What I don't want to do is sit here and criticize, but not offer any solutions or any sort of insightful and helpful opinions with regards to how I think we can improve the things that I've been moaning about. And one of the things I've probably moaned about and complained about most over the last 24 hours is the performance of Viktor Gyökeres. Now, my reaction to Viktor Gyökeres' performance against Wolverhampton Wanderers was not just based on what we saw against Wolverhampton Wanderers. He had a stinker on the day. It can happen. It happens to a lot of players, right? But there's been a bit of a build-up for me over the course of the entire season. And I've said it recently on the show. I feel like I have to look too hard at times to see what it is that Viktor Gyökeres is bringing. And granted, okay, I'm not superior to anybody else. I don't have any more weight around my opinions than anybody else. So, you know, maybe it's me to a degree, maybe I'm not seeing stuff, but when I'm really kind of trying hard and analyzing something and really sort of looking into the depth and the detail of it all, and I'm still struggling to see the good stuff, it's probably because the good stuff isn't A, happening, or B, clear enough. Now, subtle things make a difference in football. I don't deny that. A subtle bit of movement, a subtle change of direction, a subtle change in the angle with which you move the ball through the lines. All of those things can have huge impact. That is why football is such a complex and wonderful and brilliant sport. But I feel like Viktor Gyökeres is really struggling at the moment. And yes, he's just come back from injury. And we talked loads, didn't we, about the fitness element of it. When we broke the game down on Sunday morning, we said loads that, yeah, look, he's not sharp enough. He's not quick enough. He's not getting there ahead of time. But when I watched the first half back, so what I did this morning was I thought, I want to talk about Viktor Gyökeres' performance. I want to talk about what I think he can do better. I want to talk about what Arsenal need from Viktor Gyökeres. But I can't just turn up, press go live, and not have any evidence to back up what I'm saying. So what I did was I rewatched the first half of the Wolves game, and it was dire. It was dire. Let me be clear. It's not just Viktor Gyökeres that was poor. Eberici Eze was poor, and he's going to be the subject of tomorrow's pod. He was poor. Martinelli was poor. Zubimendi didn't do enough for me. There were a lot of players out on the pitch that just did not perform and did not do what we know they're capable of. But with Viktor Gyökeres, I feel like there's a bit of a common theme over the course of the season. There are so many times we've come away from games feeling underwhelmed by what he's contributed, feeling like, yeah, maybe subtly he's made a difference, but is it the kind of difference that he was brought in to make? And as I say, rather than sit here and moan, complain, I want to talk to you a little bit about his game more specifically, and I want to share with you guys some thoughts on how I think we can get more out of Viktor Gyökeres, essentially what we need from him. Now, there was one incident in the first half that I'm sure many of you remember where Arsenal worked the ball down the right-hand side and Bukayo Saka delivers a cross and he puts it right across the face of the 6-yard box, and Viktor Gyökeres is nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. The minute the ball goes out onto this right-hand side to Bukayo Saka, for me, as a centre forward, you got to be alert. You got to understand where the ball's coming, and you got to do your utmost to give yourself an advantage over the centre backs. What do you have that the centre backs don't in this scenario? You have the advantage of knowing the player. You have the advantage of playing with and training with this guy all the time. You have the advantage of pre-game, maybe telling Bukayo Saka where you want it, how you're going to attack it. You're also facing. You're not doing what the centre backs are doing here, which is sort of on the half turn. You're kind of side on because you're trying to keep a tab on Viktor Gyökeres' positioning and understand what's going on around you. But you're also, part of this offside line. You can't just drop deep. It's much more complicated for the centre half, basically, because the centre half has to play on the swivel. And the centre forward doesn't. The centre forward is looking straight at the goal. His intention is clear. He knows what he wants to do. He knows where he wants to get. Saka puts this delivery in the box and it flashes across. And Viktor Gyökeres, I'll take this on to the next screenshot, he's just nowhere near it. He's nowhere near it. He's got himself in between two of Wolves' 3 centre-backs. He's not fast enough. He's not quick enough. He's not strong enough to win the territory in order to put himself in a position to finish. And in the end, as I say, he's nowhere near it. And if you have a look at this screenshot now, for those of you that are watching, you can see that even in trying to get there in that space in between two of the 3 centre-halves, he's not sharp enough, he's not strong enough, and he's not quick enough to make that happen. And that is a real concern and a real problem, okay? Because that is exactly what Viktor Gyökeres was brought into the team to do, to be a threat within the width of the 6-yard box, within the penalty box. We signed him because he was something different to what we already had. And the reason so many people were excited is that for such a long time, people have said, that's what Arsenal were missing, that out-and-out 9. And if they get the out-and-out 9, they'll be absolutely fine and they'll be flying. And we've got the out-and-out 9. And again, it's not just based on Wolves, but Wolves is the performance that we're highlighting and really focusing on today. It's not really worked in the way that we hoped it would. So in that instance, I don't think the anticipation's there. I don't think he anticipates quickly enough what Bukayo Saka is going to do. I don't think he's quick enough, sharp enough, strong enough. And I don't think he is alert to what is developing in time for him to have that advantage. And I said this on the pod yesterday, the very best strikers in world football throughout the history of the sport, they just have this ability to anticipate, and they have this sharpness in their minds, they're cunning, and they're able as a result to make moves before others around them do, to understand what could develop and to make sure that when that does develop, if that does develop, they're in a position to take advantage of it. With Viktor Gyökeres, we're not seeing that enough at the moment. This was another scenario that I wanted to highlight in the first half where Bukayo Saka had the ball on the right-hand side. And you can see him there. He's 1v1 with the fullback. There is cover. So for Bukayo Saka to make a dart for the byline, it might be difficult because, there's cover in behind. But clearly, Bukayo Saka's got the room here with a quick shift to work it onto his right foot and deliver a first-time ball. But where is Viktor Gyökeres? Where is Viktor Gyökeres? He's hanging around in the back post space, which is where Martinelli is. he is positioned right bang in the middle of 3 Wolves defenders. And again, okay, as a crosser, when you glance up, you want to see your man on the move. You want to see something that gives you that encouragement to say, put it in that area and he'll get there. And it doesn't come. If you take this on a little bit further, Bukayo Saka ends up coming inside because he doesn't feel like the move or the cross is on for Viktor Gyökeres. And then Gyokeres gets embroiled in a wrestling match at the far post and is completely redundant in this move because he's now not in a position to receive the ball. You take it on a little bit further to another scenario in the first half, and there was this example where Arsenal comes streaming down the left-hand side. Declan Rice is holding the width on that left-hand side, charging forward. Martinelli's carrying it. Viktor Gyökeres sort of threatens to make that run into the half space in between the two centre halves. And look, I'll admit that in this instance in particular, I think Gabriel Martinelli's got to play this pass sooner. I really do. But Viktor Gyökeres never really commits to the run. And because he half-asses it and doesn't commit to the run, and I'm not saying half-asses it, by the way, because he can't do it. Like, I'm not saying it in that way. My point is that you're jogging along, you sort of develop into a kind of 3/4 pace because the move is getting quicker and quicker. You either commit to making that run into the channel, in which case you'll either receive the ball or you've taken those two guys around you with you and you've created a space inside that Eza in your picture here could potentially step into, that Saka could potentially step into, or you just jog and end up doing nothing. And that's exactly what Gyokeres does here. Look, he jogs, right? The whole thing slows down. He doesn't ever commit to the run. Martinelli, as I say, probably should have played the pass earlier, but he never got that encouragement from Viktor Gyökeres to say, play me, I'm in, do it. Because you don't know if he's going to fully commit to that run. And so people keep talking about his movement, and there is movement. Yes, there is a willingness to cover distance. There is a willingness to cover ground. Nobody is denying, that Viktor Gyökeres provides that. But when he makes the runs, like, how explosive are they? Not explosive enough. How committed is he to doing them? Probably not as committed as he should be. And again, you can circle that back and say, well, that's because he doesn't receive the passes. And I agree with that, by the way. But I've grown increasingly frustrated with the idea that the only reason that Viktor Gyökeres is not producing what we want him to produce at the moment is because he is not getting the service. It is twofold. And Viktor Gyökeres cannot control what other players do. He cannot make Martinelli release that ball earlier. He cannot make Bukayo Saka throw in the cross a split second earlier. He can't make them do those things. He can ask for it. He can call for it. He can demand it. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. What he can do, though, is improve his game. Okay. And so, as I said right at the top of the podcast, I'm not here to sit and speak for half an hour about Viktor Gyökeres and how bad he is or how many problems we've had in the first few months of kind of integrating him or how it's underwhelmed, etc., etc. No. But the truth is, right now, we're not getting what we need out of our big money striker. And these are the things that I think he can do better. These are the things that I think we need from Viktor Gyökeres in order for us to take that next step with him. When he runs those channels, he's got to do it earlier. He's got to do it with more commitment. And he's got to not hesitate and make the move. Because then if you don't get the ball, but you've spun out into the left channel and you've made this really powerful and sort of direct run, even if you don't get the ball and something develops in the middle because you've dragged a couple of players with you, then I go, brilliant centre forward play. But what's happening is that he is making the run, but not with the required sort of drive and with the required sort of explosiveness, if you like. And so as a result, a centre half's quite happy to just jockey him, knowing that he's never really going to turn on the burners and get away from you. And then that brings me on to the next question. Does Viktor Gyökeres have this stuff in the locker? Because it's all good me saying that your run needs to be more explosive, your run needs to be this, your run needs to be that. But does he have the pace? Does he have the pace to get away from top centre-halves in this league? And I say top centre-halves, we're talking about Wolverhampton Wanderers now, with all due respect, a team that are really struggling. Does he have the pace to, when he makes those runs, have everybody around him thinking, uh-oh, we're in trouble? Based on what I've seen so far, I would argue no. Now, on the basis of the Wolves game, I will cut him some slack a little bit in that sense because he's coming back from injury. He's not fully fit. We know that, right? And we've had injury problems throughout the group. He's probably played more football than he needed to, but we are in the middle of December. And so this idea of our players, some of them still not being up to speed in terms of their overall fitness levels. Now, when you come back from an injury, there's a bit of rust there. Okay, nobody denies that. That's absolutely fine. But generally speaking, I would argue that fitness, sharpness, all of that stuff, I don't think Viktor Gyökeres is at the level that he needs to be in terms of the Premier League. Let's take some of your thoughts on this from the live chat, because I can imagine this is sparking quite the debate. Also, you know, I talked about sort of the runs. The hold-up play is not good enough at the moment. The touch isn't tight enough. The sort of ability to sort of work it first time to those around you, I don't think is good enough. I think sometimes when he goes into these kind of shoulder-to-shoulder battles, which is where you hope that Viktor Gyökeres is going to excel, he doesn't. He doesn't. It's not really happening at this moment. Okay, let's take this one from Steve. He says, my criticism of Gyokeres is that he never seems to find any space. He always seems to be stuck to defenders like glue. It feels to me like he's so focused on that physical engagement, almost as though coming into the Premier League, and I know he was in the Championship before, so he's got some previous understanding of English football. I feel like almost coming into the Premier League, he's been so obsessed with those physical duels and battles that he has kind of, you know, forgotten that actually what you're trying to do as a centre forward a lot of the time is get away from the centre half, not go and engage with them. Skills Man says the biggest thing for me, as you mentioned yesterday, was when Marino was coming on. I assumed Gyokeres was coming off, and I wasn't bothered. Iceberg says too much hate on this podcast. So disappointing. Really? Well, like, I don't understand why people like. Listen, I'm not saying about you specifically, mate, but I just don't understand why people are so immature these days that any criticism, even if it's constructive, even if it's with the best of intentions, is taken as, you know, hate. This is not hate. I would love Viktor Gyökeres to go to Everton next week and score a brace and win us the game and shut everybody up and do the celebration and all the rest of it. I would love for that to happen. But we need more from Viktor Gyökeres right now. And I'm just highlighting the areas in which I think he is lacking at the moment and why I think that that's a problem for us as a team at this minute. Let's take this from Lupus, who says Gyokeres has his faults for sure, but it's definitely more than that. Still adapting and building chemistry, which has been made harder due to rotation, and we simply need to be moving the ball quicker. So I agree. I agree with you that you know the chemistry thing is an issue, and I agree that that is something that we need to see improve. But again, I think you have to be able to separate the two issues, and this is kind of the crux of my point today. From the one hand, okay, you've got the conversation about service. And I agree that the service hasn't always been there. I just highlighted an example where I thought that Martinelli should have played the ball. But if I'm Viktor Gyökeres and I'm going into the changing room after a game, or I'm sitting down with the video of the game the next day and I'm working with one of my coaches, I'm looking at that. Honestly, hand on my heart, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, did I do enough? What can I do? What can I do more? What can I control? I can't make Gabriel Martinelli, in that example, release the ball into the channel earlier, but I can convince him by making my run a bit sooner and being sharper in terms of the way that I spin into that space. And then if he doesn't give me the ball, I turn around and I say, you know, I could do nothing more. And people that watch the game closely and analyze it, you know, well, we'll spot that. They'll say, well, Viktor Gyökeres has busted a gut to get into that channel. He's just not had the ball. But there were countless examples in that first half against Wolves where he did not do that. He did not bust the gut. He made the right movement at points, but the movement wasn't made with any gusto or with any speed or with any real intent. And if that movement is made without the intent, then people aren't going to give you the ball. And I experienced this when I used to play football. And again, I didn't play as a pro, but I played at a really, really good level. I spent some time at a pro club as a teenager. So I understand the center. When I talk about center forward play, it's the role that I have the best understanding of because it's the role that I played. Not saying I know better than anyone that played at the highest level. I'm not saying that, but it's the role that I have the most insight into, I feel. And I remember, right, when I got to the end of playing, once I'd gone back to my original club after I'd had a stint with Orient, I went back to my club, right? I went back to my club and it was Sunday League and I wasn't that interested at that point. I was heartbroken. I was gutted that I'd been released. And it was just, I'll go out on Saturday night and I'll have a great time with my friends and I'll do all the things that you shouldn't do when you got a game of football the next morning, and I'll just turn up and I'll play. And my kind of realization moment that, you know, I'd allowed myself to get into this really bad place when it came to football was when I'd go to make runs, just like the run I'm highlighting Viktor Gyökeres is making, but I didn't have the pace to do it anymore. And because I didn't have the same pace and because I didn't have the same intent and because my teammates weren't confident that I was going to make something of that, they wouldn't play the ball. Whereas you rewind that back 2 years or whatever to before I left that team the first time around, the minute that the midfielders looked up, they were trying to find where I was so they could work it into me. Wherever I was, they trusted in my ability to make something happen. But as time went on, that wasn't the case anymore. And I feel like some of our players are there with Viktor Gyökeres. They'll talk about his effort publicly. They'll talk about, you know, how they get on with him on a personal level. And they won't question his professionalism because they work with him every day. They'll understand that better than anybody. But they will question whether giving him the ball is the best use of it at any given point if they don't fully believe that he's got what's necessary to turn that into gold. And right now, we're not seeing him turn enough into gold, I don't think. That's just my opinion on it. Z Gold says, Harry, he's not good enough. Just say it as it is. Maybe he's not. Time is going to tell on that. Time is going to tell on that. Paul says, Arsenal fans are waste men. Oh, come on. Truly the same fans begging for an out-and-out striker. Get one and then beg for Havertz to come back. You are your own worst enemies. I don't know why I even read that comment. Anyway, let's move on. SL Bulele says the bigger problem is the system. The very system Arsenal is married to is the one that makes them finish second all the time. Eze struggles to affect games because our attack is very static. I don't think the system always helps, but I also do not think that the system should be a cover under which players that aren't performing on an individual level can sort of hide under. I don't think that. Theo says, was a similar video made on the mighty Havertz? We had loads of conversations about Kai Havertz at the time. He was first playing for Arsenal. We talked about whether he was a midfielder, whether he was a striker. We were concerned. We were confused. We did have those conversations. Absolutely. Of course we did. Iceberg says, Harry, you're just playing into the hands of our rival fans. How? We're talking about Arsenal. We are Arsenal focused. We are trying to analyze what it is that we need from Viktor Gyökeres in order to get the best from him because we all want him to succeed. Like, I don't understand. Like, what do people want me to do? Okay, we've just watched Arsenal, okay, really struggle to get over the line against a really poor Wolves side, okay? For the last few weeks, there have been issues. We've not been as good defensively for obvious reasons, given the players that are missing. And in attack, we've just lacked that little bit of firepower that we needed to get ourselves over the line in some of those games, right? We went to Chelsea. They were down to 10 men. We didn't have the firepower to capitalize on that and take all 3 points. We then go to Aston Villa, where we equalize. The impetus is all with us. The momentum is all with us. And we don't quite have what we need to score a second goal and take the game away from them. And then we end up running out of gas and conceding a goal late on. Then we play Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Premier League. Again, I'll make this point because it's true. They're on course to statistically be the worst team in Premier League history. And we struggle to break them down. Our number 9 probably puts in his worst performance of the season. Eberici Eze does nothing. Gabriel Martinelli does nothing. This is not just about Viktor Gyökeres. We're doing Viktor Gyökeres today. Tomorrow we're doing Eberici Eze. I told you, we're going to work our way through these players, not to sit here and slate them and say he's rubbish, he's not good enough, blah, blah, blah. No, what we're trying to do is understand why it is that situations like that one against Wolves are occurring. And the two players that I'm talking about, Eze and Gyökeres, this is not the first time. If you think this was the first time that Viktor Gyökeres played for Arsenal and was ineffective, you're deluded, because that is not the case. He's been ineffective multiple times this season. Okay, so this wasn't knee-jerk. This isn't me waking up in the morning going, I didn't like Gyokeres' performance on Saturday, let's lay into Viktor Gyökeres. No, this is an ongoing issue. Viktor Gyökeres is not doing enough for Arsenal. So what do we need to get out of him? How do we get him doing the right things so that the team can benefit, but also so that he can benefit? Okay, I'd much rather be talking about how Viktor Gyökeres scored a hat-trick the other night, but that isn't the reality. And the same with Eberici Eze. Okay, he's had some brilliant moments in an Arsenal shirt, but he's also had multiple games now where he's not been able to influence the game in the way that we would have liked. And if we don't sit and analyze that and try and figure out how we get more out of them, then what are we doing here? Are we actually covering Arsenal properly on this podcast, or are we just being lip service? Like that's the thing. It's funny because it's funny because I always get people sort of saying, "Oh, you're too pro Arsenal," and then I get people now saying that I'm anti Arsenal. No, I am pro Arsenal, but some things you have to call out, some things you have to discuss, some things you have to analyze. And yeah, is it a case of we didn't know what Viktor Gyökeres was when we signed him, not as a club, but as football fans? To a degree, yeah. And I said that at the time we signed him. I said many, many times that this is very, very different to what we're used to. And maybe it's going to take some time, but by the middle of December, I expected to see more. Let's take some of the statistics into account. Let's have a look at Viktor Gyökeres' last. Hold on. This is the last 365 days, is it? I don't really want this because this would highlight things that he's done in Portugal, which doesn't really have much relevance, does it, to what we're kind of talking about? But if it is the last 365 days, I don't know if I can filter this down. Yeah, no, I don't think I can filter this down. But some of the things that jump out to me just looking at that: no assists, barely any assists, right? That is a problem. He's in the 5th percentile for assists. So we keep talking about how he creates space for others, how he makes room for others, how that's where the beauty in his game comes. But it's not really, it's something that we're seeing at Arsenal. I mean, yes, there's been a few goals. I think there's been a bit of stat padding with a couple of braces. And I've always said, like, people, when we first signed him, said Viktor Gyökeres will be a flat track bully at Arsenal. And I remember saying, well, I don't mind that. As long as he delivers in those games that we've traditionally struggled in against the low blocks, then I don't really mind that. That's absolutely fine. But we're not even getting that at this moment in time. We're not even getting that. And that's a problem. And I guess, this is a good question that's been raised in the chat now. Why do you feel okay, let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask you this question now. Hold on. I'm going to put a poll in the live chat, because for such a long time, right, we've bemoaned the fact that Mikel Merino's had to play at centre forward. So the question I'm going to ask in the chat is, who do you believe is more likely to score a goal pre-game? Okay. And the answers are Merino or Gyokeres. Okay. That is a poll in the live chat. You vote on that. Because we keep talking about styles of play. We keep talking about service. We keep talking about how one player is more suited to us than the other. Ultimately, okay, a striker has to carry goal threat. If a striker does not carry goal threat, what are they there for? What are they there for? Because if it's just about having a good first touch, if it's just about having a little bit of guile in and around the box, then you'd pick a midfielder, wouldn't you? You'd pick a midfielder. The whole purpose of playing with a 9 is that they need to carry some sort of goal threat. And unfortunately for us right now, Viktor Gyökeres does not carry goal threat. He doesn't. You go into games, you send him into the channels, you don't ever feel like he's quick enough or strong enough to come out on top and win that duel. You flash the ball across the 6-yard box, you don't feel currently like he's going to get on the end of it. There's a lot that Viktor Gyökeres is not doing at the level required. And this is beyond just the conversation about service and styles of play, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to summarize my thoughts on this while you guys get voting in that poll. Okay, the question in the poll is, who do you believe is more likely to score a goal pre-game? So if you went into a game with Mikel Merino up front, or you go into a game with Viktor Gyökeres up front, who do you believe is more likely to score a goal for Arsenal on any given day? Right now, 77% of you say Mikel Merino. So that in itself tells us that, yes, we can talk about the system, we can talk about all these other things, and all of these things do have some weight and some bearing on the conversation. But Viktor Gyökeres has got to do more. So let me answer the original question of the pod to finish off. What do Arsenal need from Viktor Gyökeres? How do we fix it? We need Viktor Gyökeres' movement to be more sophisticated. Okay, we need Viktor Gyökeres not to always be running in straight lines. We need Viktor Gyökeres to, vary up in terms of the movements that he makes. We need him to look to escape centre halves, not go into engagements with them. We need him to add some variety to his game. Sometimes drop deep, sometimes go left, sometimes go right. We need him to be alive when the ball comes across the 6-yard box, more alive than he is currently. And although playing as a 9 against a back 5 at times is going to mean that your opportunities, clear-cut ones, are limited, when they come along, he's got to be sharper in taking them, and he's got to be more devastating. One of the things that I find really frustrating about Viktor Gyökeres is that when you do work the ball into a wide area, okay, you look up as a crosser and you see Viktor Gyökeres, and he's always in between the two centre halves. That's your starting position. Fine. You want to create that confusion. You want to give them a decision to make with regards to who picks you up and who sort of is the spare man. Because if you do that, then that can cause a little bit of confusion. And that split second of delay that's caused by confusion gives you the advantage over the defender. But sometimes get across your man. Make a dart in towards the near post. That example I showed you earlier when Bukayo Saka looks as though he's going to cross from the right-hand side. Viktor Gyökeres, show him where you want it. Don't just stand in between the two centre-halves and wait for the ball to beat the fullback that Bukayo Saka's up against when he's going across, and then the centre-half that's in that near post zone. Then you're asking too much of the crosser. You're asking for him to beat two players to get the ball to you. No. I'm not saying do it every single time, but on occasion, make that dart across the near post. Get in front of the centre-half. Okay, come across the centre-half. These are all variations to a centre-forward's movement that we need to see from Gyokeres. Haaland does it. And I know Haaland's the example, right? He's the best in the business. Haaland will sometimes hang around at the far post and he'll hang up high and head in the back of the net, like he did against Crystal Palace at the weekend. Sometimes you'll flash across into the penalty area, and what does Haaland do? He comes across the guy that's in that near post zone and he gets a toe to it. Sometimes he makes room for himself and attacks the ball in between the two centre-halves. There is variety to what Erling Haaland does. Whereas with Viktor Gyökeres, I can tell you what run he's going to make every single time. And not only is it predictable at the moment, but it's also not done with the speed, with the intensity, with the strength, and with the power that's required to give him the advantage when he's attacking a ball. So we can talk about systems, service, all the rest of it, settling in, combinations, all of that stuff. As I say, it does have some bearing and some weight in this conversation. But ultimately, the question today is, what do we need from Viktor Gyökeres? We need him to be at a better physical level. We need him to be smarter in terms of his runs. We need to see more variety in his runs. We need to see better anticipation. And we need to see him be clinical when the chances come his way. And I don't feel right now, looking at Viktor Gyökeres, that any of those things are present at this moment in time. Hopefully that changes. Hopefully he gets better. Hopefully he improves. And hopefully he'll have a massive say between now and the end of the season. And we'll all be eating our words. I hope with all my heart that that's the case. But right now we need more from Viktor Gyökeres. This is more than just being about a player who's not getting the service. You could make that argument in the first few weeks of the season. You could make that argument in the first couple of months. But we're now in the middle of December, and I don't think the player is giving us everything that we need. Equally, I don't think he's being presented with what he needs. And the whole thing is just a bad recipe at the moment. It's a bad cocktail. But let's hope it gets better. Those are my thoughts. Right. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's pod. Really, really appreciate all the love and support. Thank you for being with us live. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a hype on the video as well. All of that stuff really, really does help. Also, if you are interested, you can become a Chronicles of a Gooner patron for 50% off in December. There is a special offer available to you guys. Go into the link in the description, click on the link, use the discount code that's in there as well. I think it's Xmas25, and that'll give you 50% off your first month's membership. There was a Patreon pod that we released yesterday evening, and the next one will be coming up a little bit later in the week. So make sure you get yourself subscribed. That way you'll never miss an episode. Had some cracking conversations with some of our Patreon members on Discord over the last couple of days with regards to this subject. The more I think about it, the more I believe that the player has to up the level in order for us to see the best version of Viktor Gyökeres at Arsenal. Thank you so much. I'll catch you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful Monday. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Chronicles of a Gooner.